Hello, this is Jeff Phillips with Reserve Officers Association. We're here today with Mr. Tom Shull, who's the Director CEO of the Army and Air Force Exchange System. And Tom, good to see you again today. Thank you very much for being here.
Great to see you, thank you.
I want to ask you one question in particular. The Exchange Retiree Advisory Council, ROA, has been a member of it for some time. Very proud to be a member and contributing. Can you tell us a little bit about the council, why it was formed, and what it does?
Sure. Well, it's a representation from all the MSOs and VSOs, the ones that are most significant, like ROA, and what you do to make sure we're aligned with every constituency within the military community. So the idea is with AUSA and TRIA and all the others, we really are aligned all the time with the needs of the warfighters and their families. We don't always have, although we're close to the customer base because we serve customers every day, it's that strategic perspective that we need in terms of being fully aligned with, particularly as missions change or the strategies shift among the various components, whether it's reserves or National Guard or active duty. We just want to always be aligned with those we serve. So the intent is to have folks like Susan Lucas and Lonnie Burnett, who have been great additions.
Our Chief of Staff and
Exactly.
Deputy Ledge Director.
Exactly. And but what they've done to keep us aligned has been phenomenal. And certainly as it relates to the reserve force, making sure that we support reserves when they're serving, active duty, and they're active, their roles on. And it's so important to be aligned with the needs and increase our support to them. Mm-hmm. It's easy because of the active duty, Army, the big Army tends to push for the active duty. What's so important.
That's why ROA exists.
Exactly, is to make sure we're always there for the reservists and National Guard and making sure their needs are equally met as well as the active duty and retirees.
An example is when, and you led the way on this, opening online sales to members of the reserve components so that they can get their uniforms before going on active duty for the weekend.
Exactly.
And if they have a torn uniform, they can get it and be strapped and ready to go when they show up.
And it was a temporary initiative now, but as of today, our board has approved it permanently.
That's great news.
So we're just very excited to be able to provide the needs, uniform needs, and it's what's great about that is you get busy and you forget to. You may not have access to an exchange to go purchase the items.
Absolutely.
So getting online, and we deliver typically pick, pack, ship same day, and they'll get it the second day or maybe the latest third day for a uniform item. So if they anticipate at least early enough in the week for the weekend, they'll have what they need for that weekend.
And that efficiency of operations reflects your own deep experience in the retail world.
Well, I've School of Hard Knocks, which is just learning, particularly online, and how to provide a fulfillment service that's we like to think best in class. We certainly deliver, particularly now that we actually deliver. We ship from stores, so you may get an item here in DC. It might come from Belvoir, so you might get. The reason we can ship overnight is it may be shipped right out of Belvoir, the Belvoir store, to your address. So that way we can utilize our existing infrastructure and facilities to make sure that delivery is a good delivery. But then it really truly is a benefit, because if we can provide that kind of fulfillment capability to support, in this case, the reserves, as they anticipate their service for that weekend or for the 2 weeks of service.
Or more.
Exactly. Or full deployment.
Absolutely.
Because that is what's different. As I've come back to serve, it is different now because reserves and National Guard, when you think about 1 million who have served, that's just stunning.
Yeah, it's an amazing change.
We just could not have done what we've done the last 15 years without the Reserve and National Guard, full stop.
And now if you go into a PX and it happens to be the Army's birthday, for example, there's probably banners flying,
right.
And that's under your leadership, and we appreciate that's a great message to send. We were talking earlier about AAFES support to soldiers, members of all services deployed. But we also have some domestic and near domestic situations, the hurricanes in Texas and Puerto Rico, and AAFES was right there.
Well, and that's like our mission at the tip of the spear, serving those in harm's way. that truly is one of the missions we value the most and how we can make a difference. I remember when I arrived in 2012, I got a call in the middle of the night, and it was from Homeland Security, and they didn't have any gas. So I literally had to get my tankers moving into the eye of the storm for Hurricane Sandy. And they literally went into the eye of the storm. They set up operations at Fort Hamilton, and we set up a TOC, and we provided gas, water, all the needed supplies for all first responders during that hurricane. So that was the beginning of a renewed focus on supporting missions when there are natural disasters. Most recently, in Houston, we had Hurricane Harvey. We set up a mobile field exchange to serve the National Guard and Reserve and all the first responders. So we immediately went in to set up our operations. We were set up within 24 hours.
Wow.
So that we could serve, and anyone who needed help, we were there to help, to support. So we set up our operations there in Houston, and it was really, it's one of those missions where you take great pride, because we seldom get any credit for any of this. It's not about credit, but certainly we have the knowledge of what we did to make a difference for so many Houstonians who were impacted by Harvey, and then fast forward into Irma came next in Florida.
Right.
And I was at Patrick and Homestead shortly after that, and visited all my teammates and thanked them. But the thank yous from all of the, particularly the deputy garrison commanders or installation commanders and commanders, were just, it was just phenomenal in terms of the recognition and acknowledgement of what we did. We were the first ones open, literally after the storms, to make sure that the needs were provided, particularly things like water. And then fast forward into Puerto Rico with Hurricane Maria, we already had pre-positioned hundreds of generators. We brought in 50 million gallons of gas. We had millions of bottles of water to support the first responders and those that were impacted. I remember the first call, we set up usually we set up a emergency team that I participate in these calls, but the first thing that I heard was we were missing 100 of our associates in Puerto Rico. So I said we had about 200. It was about half of our teammates were missing. I said, well, mission one, after serving those we served and getting all our operations up and running again, is let's make sure we account for every single one of our teammates.
There was a mission one that came before that.
Yes. No, what was interesting is we had employees that went in the very next day. We hadn't even been able to set up our operations yet. And they went in, to serve in the expresses and the food courts and the exchanges, ready to serve, because we didn't have communication set up, because all the phone lines were down.
Right.
And none of the satellites were working. So it was one of those things where they just said, I've got to go work. So they showed up the next day, and of course some cases we couldn't get the operations up that quickly, but literally within a week we were up and running pretty much.
It's fantastic.
And we had generators already set up, because one of the things we did learn from Hurricane Sandy is the need to have generators pre-positioned or already operating. In the case of our facilities in Puerto Rico, we already had generators up and running. Literally, right after the storm, we had service. And
So in a way, you were augmenting FEMA and other agencies.
FEMA, right, Homeland Security, all the police, local police force, local fire departments, and of course the National Guard in Puerto Rico, and reserves. So we were very much supportive of every mission in terms of the first responders and those that were serving.
Well, it sounds like AAFES has once again found an essential role.
Well, we're just proud to serve.
And it's those kinds of things which we recognized when we awarded you the 2018 ROA Minuteman Hall of Fame Award. Your outstanding support for not just the military community, including families and veterans, well, with your I'd say, a turnaround of AAFES in the 6 years you've been there, but your special focus on the reserve components, and we very much appreciate that. It's a symbolism of your own recognition of the importance of the reserve components. So
Well, it's a real honor. I did have an opportunity to serve 7 years in the reserves.
There you go.
And I really valued that time, but during that era, we weren't treated with the respect that we now treat reservists, and so your organization has been so critical in establishing that the the equality, if you will, of the reserve force, and being there right with the active duty and
Every
national
bit of the
guard.
way.
Absolutely.
Well, sir, it's a real pleasure to talk to you again. We look forward to doing some shopping soon.
Great.
But thank you again for your leadership of AAFES and your own service in our Army.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.